For the longest time, software engineering has been one of the most critical and most expensive parts of any modern company. But it's often been managed like a total black box, run more on gut feelings than on actual hard data. Well, that's all starting to change. So let's dive in and see how data is finally turning the lights on. To really get the heart of the problem, picture this scene. It's the end of the quarter. All the department heads are in the boardroom to present their results. The room is just filled with charts, graphs, and numbers. So marketing gets up, they're talking lead conversion, ROI, hard numbers. Sales presents this super detailed sales funnel. Finance, they've got KPIs for pretty much everything. And then engineering gets up. They talk about things like story points and ticket velocity. These aren't objective metrics, they're subjective. The rest of the company is speaking the language of data, while engineering has been stuck relying on instinct. And look, we're not talking about a small problem here. Just think about it. A software engineering team of only 100 people can easily have a fully loaded cost of over $10 million a year. That's a massive multi-million-dollar investment that's been managed almost completely in the dark. So, this leads us to the big question, right? Why has this discipline, which is filled with some of the most analytical and intelligent people on the planet, been one of the very last to adopt metrics-driven management? So why all the resistance? Well, for years, you'd hear the standard answers. Things like, oh, engineering is a creative art, you can't measure it. Or, hey, we already use story points. But behind all those excuses, there was one very real, very legitimate barrier. The data itself was basically locked away. See, until just recently, trying to get clean, usable data out of code repositories like Git was incredibly difficult. But here's the thing, that problem has been solved. There's a whole new class of tools that can now measure and quantify what's happening across all of a company's code. That huge technical hurdle, it's gone. And with that barrier gone, the software world is at a really exciting threshold. So what are the metrics that are becoming the new industry standards? Let's take a look at 5 key ones that are finally bringing some much-needed clarity. So the first metric answers a question that old measures like lines of code could never even get close to. How much actual brain power went into the work? It's not about how much you type. It's about the complexity of what you're building. The answer is a new metric called impact, and it's a game changer. Instead of just counting lines of code, impact analyzes the changes to the code base to estimate the cognitive load, the real difficulty and complexity of the work. It's a much, much smarter way to understand what true productivity actually looks like. Now, this is where it gets really powerful. When you start tracking impact over time, you can see if a team is actually becoming more productive. Suddenly, you can go to your leadership and show them a 20% increase in real output, turning that into a multi-million-dollar value proposition that any executive will immediately understand. Okay, next up, let's talk about every engineer's favorite thing, meetings, right? All those status update meetings, the daily stand-ups, they just eat up a huge amount of time. What if there were a better way? And there is. The solution is direct visibility. By giving managers a real-time dashboard that shows code commits and pull requests as they're happening, you basically eliminate the need for a huge chunk of that verbal reporting. Managers can see progress right from the source. No meeting required. The effect of this is real and it's immediate. Just cutting out a couple of those status meetings each week can give every single engineer a 5% boost in productive coding time. Across a whole team, that adds up incredibly fast. This extra visibility does more than just save time, though. It can also be an early warning system. I mean, every manager worries about someone on their team getting stuck or projects slowly going off the rails. So how can data help you spot that trouble before it's too late? The answer is in a metric called code churn. It's basically the amount of code that gets rewritten shortly after it's first committed. Now, a little bit of churn is perfectly normal. In fact, it's healthy. It's part of the creative process. But when it deviates significantly from the baseline, that's a signal. Industry benchmarks show that a typical team is about 75% efficient, which means about 25% of their code is churn. So if that churn level suddenly spikes way above 25%, an engineer might be struggling. If it drops way below 10%, they might be playing it too safe. It gives a manager a clear data-backed signal to just check in and offer help. All right, here's a question that keeps CFOs up at night, and one that engineering leaders have historically found really hard to answer precisely. Are we building the future, or are we just maintaining the past? Data now makes this totally transparent. By analyzing the code itself, We can precisely quantify how much engineering effort is going into brand new features versus just refactoring and supporting old legacy code. You get hard data on your technical debt. And the financial side of this is staggering. For that same 100-person team, if just 30% of their time is spent dealing with legacy code, that's over $3 million a year dedicated to just maintaining what you already have. Making that number visible is the first step to actually managing it. So you've figured out what your team is working on, but how are they working on it together? That brings us to collaboration. Code reviews are essential for quality, but they can also turn into a massive bottleneck that slows everything down. How do you find that right balance? Well, by tracking data around pull requests, things like their complexity, how many people review them, and how long they stay open, managers can get a really clear view of their team's collaboration health. Too little review is risky, too much is just a drain on everyone's time. Data helps you find that productive middle ground. Now, having all these powerful metrics is one thing, but implementing them successfully, that's a whole other story. This isn't just a technical shift, it's a major cultural one. And this is probably the most important takeaway of all. Data doesn't replace good management. It's a tool to make it better. The entire purpose has to be about team improvement and learning. Because if these metrics are ever used to punish or blame someone, the culture becomes toxic and the whole system breaks down. The message from the very top has to be about growth and helping the team do its best work. We're at a really exciting point in time. For the first time ever, software engineering can step out of the dark and into the same data-driven world that the rest of the business lives in. The lights are on. So the question for every leader now is, how will we use this new visibility to not just measure, but to truly empower our teams?